Hello! Today I'd like to talk about Ian Fleming's iconic 1959 novel, stroke thriller, stroke spy story, Goldfinger. I'm going to talk about the novel and book in general, but not too much about the actual story. And also specifically about my own personal copy because it is quite different and much rarer than the already very scarce standard copy. But more of that in a bit. The first reason I wanted to do this is because I'm a bit of a fan and collector of the original books, because I don't think that the original written work hardly ever gets the limelight anymore or much attention. Virtually everyone knows the films, but few people, I reckon, could say with much confidence where it all came from. And in fact, Fleming was on to his 10th Bond adventure. That was the S.P.I Love Me by the time the first film came out, which was Dr. No in 1962. I should admit here to a certain amount of geeky annoyance to things like whenever I hear someone quoting a bit of film frippery as fundamental Bond fact, when I know what Fleming was writing originally. But anyway, that's just me. And to be fair, the earlier Sean Connery films do run quite close to the original stories. I've also been spurred on to do this bit of detective work after I was lucky enough to get my own personal copy of Goldfinger, an appearance on a well-known TV show. But unfortunately, we didn't have too much time to get to grips with any detailed information. So I've decided, largely for the fun of it and partly to see just how much I could find out about just one specific Fleming novel. And the answer to that question was quite surprising in the end, so here we go. I should just mention that I'm not a book dealer or any sort of professional, just just an enthusiast who spent a lifetime searching the boot sales and the charity shops, and nowadays, of course, it's the auction sites. So this is a first edition, so as you can see, there are which basically means the first time it appears in print, and also a first print of the first edition. We can show that quite easily just by looking at the print information here. So just one print there, unlike this copy, which has 5 prints, another copy of Goldfinger, a later one, and this has, hopefully you can see, 5 prints, and that makes it 1963, so a little bit further down the line for that particular copy. And of course, it's generally accepted that the first print is nearly always the most desirable. And I can still actually remember a time when I myself didn't really understand what a first print and what a first edition was. So I thought it'd be nice just to run through that. There were 24,000 copies of this particular first print. It's clearly a hardback, and it was printed by Jonathan Cape. There's their little symbol there. And it was written by Ian Fleming in 1958 in what I'm going to call his rustic retreat in Jamaica, which was GoldenEye. And of course, back in the day, GoldenEye was quite basic, with no running hot water, for example, or even without proper windows. This is actually the longest of the original James Bond stories. The book itself is a standard copy. It's quite clean and undamaged. There's a very slight push there if you look carefully, hardly anything at all. And the pages are still creamy white, in nice condition, and it's not got any of the foxing marks, the little brown speckles that affect a lot of books. Anything that's old and papery, quite often. I've got an example here. Hopefully you can see those brown speckly marks all over this one. Anyhow. Not bad at all for something that's now over 60 years old. Generally speaking, all the Cape First editions have these black exterior covers, with a design on the front, but there can be exceptions to colour, and also quite notably the absence of a blind stamp design to the man with the golden gun, which is missing on, well, most copies that you'll ever come across. And I'll just show a little example of that man with the golden gun, and no design on that one to the front. And I'm going to leave a little bit of intrigue just hanging on that one for another day. Now, on this blind stamped skull design, it is known that a small number of copies can be found with a small piece of extra skull detail to the top left of the skull, approximately there, and sometimes referred to as extra notched detail. And it's assumed that early on the peg broke or worked loose, and that that left collectors looking out for the rarer and presumably earlier copies of the first print, but with the little bit of extra detail. I'm hoping you'll be able to see that little bit of extra detail on a photograph that I've got here. It's quite small, but has left collectors searching for that little extra bit. Anyway. Incidentally, the original working title for Goldfinger was The Richest Man in the World, which itself is said to have been based on the American gold tycoon Charles W. Engelhart. Great name. Other examples of working titles in the Bond canon might include The Undertaker's Wind for Live and Let Die, or The Wound Man for Dr. No. And The Undertaker's Wind does sound quite funny until you realise it's referring to onshore offshore breezes in Jamaica. Amusingly, Fleming took the name Goldfinger from Erno Goldfinger, a Hungarian-British architect whose work Fleming wasn't very keen on. Fleming often appropriated names, shall we say, from people he knew, and occasionally fell on sort of stony ground if they disapproved for any reason, which in fact is the case here. Apparently there ended up being quite a bit of animosity between the two, even to the stage of Fleming threatening to change the character name to Goldprick. It did occur to me, has this got anything to do with the well-known Mike Myers spoof film? It's also just plain ironic that Erno Goldfinger designed the Alexander Fleming house. More name fun in this novel might include Fleming's beloved golf club, the Royal St George's, becoming the Royal St Mark's, golf pro Albert Whiting gets changed to Albert Blacking, and allegedly and interestingly, Jill Masterton's name is a play on John Masterman, who was involved in double agent systems during World War II. One more, Pussy Galore is said to have been taken from Pussy, presumably a pet name, Olivia Deakin. It's also been suggested that she was also partly based on Blanche Blackwell, a close Jamaican friend of Ian's. It's probably worth mentioning at this point that Fleming was very well connected and knew many important or influential people. And one of the most influential to him, his mother, does get her maiden name dropped into this novel too, if you know where to look. I'm just going to drop in one more small name-related observation. Due to popularity, quite a few Goldfinger jewellery shops appeared around the country, and I've seen one or two of those in my travels over the years. Anyway, I'm going to skim through a few relevant timeline facts now. So, in 1955, Fleming attended an Interpol conference in Istanbul, where he took plenty of notes concerning the ingenuity used in gold smuggling. And of course, we know of Goldfinger's ingenious idea of turning his car panels into panels made of gold and smuggling the gold that way. And again later, whilst on a stay at Enton Hall Health Clinic, Fleming met and took considerable interest in the goldsmith Guy Welby. And probably some more of Goldfinger's character was formed there. In 1959, when Goldfinger was released, Fleming was he went flying around the world gathering information for what eventually became his factual book, Thrilling Cities. And he also wrote the short story 007 in New York, which is not so well known by everyone. But anyway, there's a copy of Thrilling Cities. That's actually also by Jonathan Cape, if you can see the little symbol at the bottom there. Quite an interesting point in the actual Goldfinger story is the fact that Fleming dedicates nearly 30 pages to Bond's epic golf battle against Goldfinger, which has quite a decent amount of golfing passion and detail to it, and arguably was more carefully written and thought out than the actual plot itself. And the plot of the novel did receive a fair bit of criticism back in the day for things like Goldfinger's inexcusably poor judgment when he decides not to finish Bond off but instead keep him handy to help with his plan to raid Fort Knox. Well, why wouldn't you? Which itself has problems of things like just how exactly you could realistically move that weight of gold quickly. I've got some amusing contemporary Goldfinger reviews here from the newspapers. Mr. Fleming seems to be leaving realism further and further behind, but with his forked tongue stuck right through his cheek, he remains manically readable for some of the time and continues to get away with much more than murder. And another one read, "He has now completely overreached himself. There is now nothing left for Bond but the Martians, and they are welcome to him." And I did find a little bit of a fight back from Ian Fleming, which reads, "As for sex, well, one of the girls is normal. Snobbery, just the normal good living. Sadism, let's call it blood and thunder." So certainly quite a bit of banter going on there then. A detail to add to the golfing theme is that I believe there are Goldfinger charity tournaments arranged from time to time around the country. And now I'm going to mention inscriptions. Now, normally a random inscription, as you can see, there's nothing written in this one, luckily. Well, unless it was signed by Ian Fleming himself, of course. But it's sort of random inscriptions to a collectible book would almost certainly devalue it. To Dad, happy birthday, for example. But important or interesting inscriptions like from the author to a friend can add substantial value and collectability. And one or two excellent so-called dedications do exist for the Goldfinger book. One says, "To Henry Cotton," who's a golfing professional, who may be amused by pages 92 to 113. Or another one which reads, "To Alfred and Cecil Blacking, on condition they don't sue me." And of course, these personal issues are virtually all in the hands of dedicated collectors or professional book experts and dealers nowadays. I've got a couple of other notes on details in the story that are slightly entertaining. The scene where Oddjob is sucked out of the plane window was taken from an article Fleming read in the newspaper. The story uses a cards theme to expose Goldfinger as a villain, and Fleming often uses cards as part of a story, or even just cards as a metaphor for something or another. That's something he often uses. Goldfinger's yellow Rolls Royce may well have been modelled on Lord Lonsdale's own personal fleet of Rolls Royces, so that's a little bit of interest as well. So I'm now going to move on to my own specific copy, and in particular the dust jacket, which fits around and protects the book. Firstly, the excellent artwork is by Richard Chopping, who you ought to hold that up so you can have a good look at that. Isn't that brilliant artwork? Quite subtly done as well, with the wood grain and the rose. And he was quite gifted at this sort of three-dimensional work, which just seems to virtually hop off of the page. Interestingly, there are none of his trademark flies on this particular jacket design. I've got an example here that where he quite often puts some flies onto quite a lot of the jackets, which is a bit of fun really, and this one's absolutely swarming with them. Anyway, Richard Chopping actually lived in Wivenhoe in Essex, which is just so happens to be only a few miles away from where I grew up. Now this dust jacket is hiding a secret, and although at first glance it would look identical to a standard jacket, with closer inspection you can see some differences. The biggest of these is on the reverse of the jacket, which has two of its titles in a completely different place to any other standard first impression jacket. So Live and Let Die and From Russia With Love have swapped places. So normally From Russia With Love would be at the top there. On all normal copies that you'll see them the other way round normally. Also, a smaller detail here is this Dr. No is shortened to, in the middle there, is shortened to DR. In all other copies that you'll see, it's spelt out in full, DOCTOR. And it's square cut. You'll be able to see that this price here would have been 15 shillings, and that's been cut off, but the rest of the jacket is basically square. If I hold that round that way, you'll be able to see that square corner there, and those square corners there. I understand that the corners on the standard jackets are usually cut off to help with the printing process, so I assume it helps, or used to help, in running the jackets through the printing machinery. And I've now seen a few proof copy titles, bond titles, and I'm pretty sure that they all have square cut jackets too. And I'm just wondering if they didn't bother clipping corners when it was just a very short run of prints. Anyhow, I thought I'd just mention standard jackets can occasionally be found that haven't been clipped, and I'm thinking of a third impression of You Only Live Twice. And I've owned quite a few of those over the years, and every single one of them has had a square cut, non-clipped jacket. Actually, that jacket's a little bit wider than normal as well, so we kind of assume that batch completely missed the cutting and clipping. But I've also have a completely original early 60s from Russia with Love with a square cut jacket, and I've seen a few other ones over the years. So for whatever reason, original jackets do sometimes turn up without the corners clipped. Now, the original proof copy book that would have gone inside a jacket would not have looked like the Cape First Edition book, and in fact it could hardly be further away really. It was, to start with, it was a paperback, and going by what I've seen, they didn't fit the jackets didn't fit the paperback books very well, and they had a very brightly coloured design. So it was a sort of a lime green with Jonathan Cape symbols printed onto it in white. So quite a striking looking book, and quite desirable. Once again, these proof copy books are sort of highly prized and coveted items, especially as they may have been they would have been uncorrected proofs, and they may have had extra bits of script that have been dropped from the eventual first printing and all subsequent printings. So collectors enjoy trying to find those. So armed with all this information, I set out to discover for sure exactly what this jacket was, and after several weeks of hunting around the internet, I'd come across the idea of the proof copy jacket. And eventually I found a picture of a book with a jacket exactly the same as mine, and I was quite excited because proof copy means a very limited run of unique copies made up to sort of show the trade what the eventual book might look like, and that would be just a short while before the first printing proper came out. So they're obviously a bit of a holy grail really for collectors. Anyway, after a bit more research and cross-referencing, I decided to find the underlying things once and for all by asking for an expert opinion. So I went pretty much right to the top and asked probably the most informed person in the world currently. And this chap has written the book that all other collectors and dealers now refer to themselves. So a very high profile person in the world of Bond indeed. Anyway, I was delighted firstly to receive a reply at all to my probably somewhat naive email, and secondly to receive confirmation that this is indeed a proof copy dust jacket, and one of only 125 known copies ever printed, which makes this quite a prospect actually. I'm not going to try and value this book just now, and we must remember really that the jacket and the book, strictly speaking, don't precisely match, because this would have gone around the brightly coloured paperback proof copy version. But so to some people it might be classed as a marriage, which in my eyes is a bit like saying your jewellery is devalued because the diamond's too big, sir. But anyway, I'm only going to say that a standard copies of Goldfinger from that original first 24,000 copies, which this is, in good condition in recent years have been realising, well, closer and closer to £1,000, and that's what they fetch at auction, not what people advertise them for. But I think the main thing that we should take from all this is that in fact Goldfinger is a type of banana. So I hope this has been very informative and fun. Thank you very much.